Hello and welcome to Surveyor Says, the podcast from the National Society of Professional Surveyors. Each week, we bring you fascinating guests that are involved in the profession of surveying. We cover a lot of ground, including Table A Talk with Gary Kent, Point of Order with the NSPS Joint Government Affairs Team, Future Focus, highlighting current and future leaders of the profession, and everything survey-related in between. Thanks for joining us here on the podcast, and hope you enjoyed listening to this episode of Surveyor Says.
Greetings, this is your host, Curt Sumner, for the NSPS series Surveyor Says. Thank you for joining us today. My guest today is Joe Fenicle, who has actually recorded things with me before. Back when we were doing the radio show, Joe was doing a different thing than he's doing now, but in January of 2019, he was on the show and we talked about some of his experiences. And way back in April of 2017, we talked about James Riley surveyors, something he was involved in or working with at the time. So this is just an extension, Joe, of our previous conversations, just in a little different circumstance this time because of you taking on a new project, so to speak, at the University of Akron.
Yeah. Thanks, Curt. It's a pleasure to be here. Yeah, I don't stay very bored. I can tell you that there's a lot going on. I kind of forgot about Riley until you mentioned that. That was a really cool topic back in Northwest Ohio. But yeah, since then we have relocated within the last few months, and we've switched from the public land survey system to the Connecticut Western Reserve now. So I have a lot to learn here where we're living now. But the history here is amazing. And I think it's just sparking some of my research efforts here into the future. But no, it's a great pleasure to be here, and thank you very much.
Now, did you already have a license in Ohio before you went? And if not, are you planning to get the license there and still keep any kind of practice going? That may not be possible with all the things you need to do, but.
Yeah, no, I actually got licensed in Ohio first. I'm actually an alumni of Akron here. I graduated in May of 2000. So I got my license in Ohio first, and then a couple of years later got licensed in Michigan. So yeah, my private business is still in Michigan. I got to figure that out, but I'm going to continue to do my nationwide speaking engagements, and eventually I'll probably transfer over my LLC here into Ohio during the summer months and some of the time off. I do have 3 young boys, so they're tall enough they can start holding the rod at this point.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I was going to ask you about the speaking engagements because I know that was a pretty heavy schedule for you for a while, at least.
Yeah, it was getting pretty wild. That's when you and I met out in Oregon,
right?
And that's when I got in trouble for saying Oregon, if you remember.
Yes,
they had to correct me in mid-seminar, but Oregon was great. I was in Martinsburg, West Virginia last summer, and we'll hit on that here in a little bit. But that was an amazing presentation it was called the Eastern Panhandle chapter of the West Virginia Society. But just a great group of surveyors there. And then I'm going out to Kansas in a few months here in January for that Salina seminar series, and it's pretty humbling to be there. I mean, that's where Penry talks and Kent and Seymour. A lot of Milt Denny was there. A lot of great surveyors. So I'm definitely humbled to be invited to be their featured speaker. But got a lot of great material. It's going to be 3 days worth of stuff. So I got to keep my voice up and stay healthy for sure.
Yeah, they've cleaned up their show a little bit. There were a few years where they had me out there, and then they decided they really needed good speakers. So I haven't been for quite a while, but seriously, I always enjoyed going to that particular series. They're a great group out there.
Yeah, I can't wait. I'm really excited. My wife's going to tag along again, and we'll make a little vacation out of it. So it'll be nice. I don't know how Kansas is going to be in January, but we're excited.
Sure, and it's a really good, really nice facility they have there.
Yeah, yeah, it
Really
sounds
big
nice.
rooms. You can, they can accommodate a lot of people. And so
Yeah,
it's a really, really good setup. You'll enjoy it a lot. I'm sure you
yeah,
will.
and we're keeping it going. It's going to be live in person at this point, and we're very optimistic. We're going to follow all the guidelines and keep it going. And I'm getting pretty used to teaching in a mask right now, so that'll be commonplace anyway.
Yeah, just as you're making that transition, just getting adjusted, you may get to the point where you think you can't be an instructor without a mask.
Well, I think you definitely have to elevate your tone in your voice. So yeah, when the mask comes off, I'm probably going to be screaming at people. They'll probably be like, "What's wrong with this guy?" But no, we're adjusting. You kind of just deal with it here at the university, and it's going to go away at some point. So we follow the guidelines, and we're just fortunate for our health and the students, and just trying to keep everybody healthy right now.
Right? Or your classrooms are set up in a manner where you can have your full group at any given class.
Yeah, we have to follow the guidelines, of course, by CDC and in Summit County here in Ohio. But yeah, we spaced all our desks out for the social distancing, spread everything out. We had to split some labs. They were just too big, so it put a little more load hours on us, because instead of teaching one big lab, we broke it into two to space it. But then we are recording our lectures online. So it's a hybrid approach, but the rest of the classes are in person, and it's going really well. I mean, great feedback so far from the students. They love the in person, and like you and I talked offline a little bit, it's that give and take. The students have a lot to offer, and I try to bring that into the classroom so we can incorporate that. But it's makes for a more dynamic setting, and they like that. They like the stories, Curt. They like the war stories of real surveying. They don't want to just hear me lecture out of the book. They love it when I get off topic and telling them about getting chased by a dog and having poison ivy so bad I got to go to the hospital, or stuff like that. That's what they like.
Yeah, things they need to know because they will encounter, right?
You bet they will. Yeah, I mean they got to talk themselves out of some situations. So, but no, for real. I mean that's why I push so hard for the in person. And I'm not saying we don't have complications from the pandemic here, but we're trying to stay with it and give the students the best education we can, by all means.
Yeah, that I was going to ask you, and you kind of covered that already. That transition from the private sector, so to speak, into academia. Anytime we make a transition, whether it's private sector to public service or to academia or whatever, there's always some level of adjustment. But one of the things that I've been really pleased about in our educational system overall is how many people that are in that same category you're in, where they have the credentials and the capabilities to be instructors, but they do it from the perspective of somebody who's actually doing and has done the work. I think that's a pretty big deal, especially for us in surveying.
Yeah, I'm incredibly humbled to be here. I mean, it is. Yeah, so I was in private for 10 years out of Toledo. And I worked for Dave and Jim Andrus, and Jim unfortunately passed away from complications from COVID recently, but very fortunate to spend time in the public or the private sector, and then go public. So I was in the public sector for the last 15 years, and then I was also teaching adjunct at that same time. So I kind of had my foot in the door in education. And it was always my goal to pursue that full time. So it's pretty awesome to be here. It really is. I mean, I think I have a lot to offer, a lot of good experiences in some of these classes I've done since 2000, going back to Owens Community College and University of Toledo. So it's cool. I mean, there's new material, of course, and the technology is constantly changing. I did a really cool drone class this semester, unmanned aerial mapping, and just the technology is phenomenal, and the students love it. They absolutely love it. So it's humbling to be here. I mean, we had a professor retire, and I came in to replace him, and Gary Schuler's still here. He's been here for 21 years. Gary actually started full time as I was graduating here in 99, 2000. So I never had him as a professor, but we knew each other and we had overlap. So a great deal of respect there for Gary. And Mrs. Besh is still here, of course. She's been here for 37 years, Curt. I'm only 43, so.
Yeah, I was going to say that Mike and Ann, over the years, and my experiences through NSPS, they've been one of those. Of course, Mike's passed on, but just mainstays in the whole educational realm, but in surveying in general.
Of course.
They're one of those couples you look at and look up to.
You betcha.
They've done.
Yeah. No, I had Ann as an instructor when I was here, and just a great deal of respect. And it's awesome to be here in an office next door to Gary and Ann right next door. So a lot of great people here. Just in general, it's pretty awesome to be here. Not to say it's not difficult. I'm not going to lie to you. It is the change to full-time academia is a little overwhelming, and I'm still pursuing my master's program at Maine right now. So on top of that, and setting up a new house, we're still trying to farm back in Michigan right now. It's a little chaotic at our household.
Well, if you have idle time, it seems as though you've got a pretty wide range of famous surveyors and explorers there that you can just maybe track some of their work down or something.
I'll tell you what, in my spare time, you're going to see some pretty cool articles, probably in American Surveyor from some of the surveyors of where we're at. So I'll say we settled in, and I'm not saying settled in a literal tense. We relocated to Hudson, Ohio, and Hudson is northeast of Akron, about 25 minutes. And I'll be honest with you, I did not know all the history when we moved here. I would be lying to you if I told you we moved there because of all this history. I remember Hudson being a very strong community, incredible schools. So that's the main reason we chose it. But looking into some of the history, and I read a lot at night, and David Hudson himself settled there in 1799, and he was a surveyor, he was a settler. He surveyed a lot of the township that we're in. Obviously, Hudson Township was named after David Hudson, but that's just the tip of the iceberg, Curt. There is so much history in Hudson. I always get it wrong, but the Western Reserve College was founded in Hudson going back to 1826, and on the site, it's now called the Western Reserve Academy, but on the site of the college, they used to call it the Yale of the West, and on the site of the college, still there today, is the second oldest observatory in the United States. And some sources say it's the oldest in the U.S., but it was built in 1838 by Elias Loomis, and he was a astronomy professor from Yale that came out to teach in Hudson. And the observatory is, I'll send you pictures of this, or we can post them somehow, but it is absolutely just an amazing building. The telescope is still in there. The base of the telescope has a first order NGS position on it. Just a phenomenal history. He studied the stars, determined the lat long of the position, and that's just a little fragment. And then to carry on, I've been with this whole Kansas tie. I always like trying to figure out some ties to myself to where I'm speaking at. So I've been doing research on Kansas and surveyors and the 39th Arc, and then I came across John Brown, and in your area, John Brown, the abolitionist at Harpers Ferry, and it's weird how everything's kind of circular for me, because I was just in Harpers Ferry last July when I was speaking at Martinsburg, and I went off and just had dinner in Harpers Ferry and kind of watched the rivers and the train go by, and I was at this this restaurant called the Rabbit Hole, and it was just beautiful. It was 95 degrees out. It was miserably hot, but I was just overlooking where the raid took place at the armory from John Brown, and And I started doing this reading literally just the other night, and John Brown's name popped up. Well, guess where John Brown was from? Hudson, Ohio. And I'm like, what are the chances? So his father was Owen Brown, but there's more. John Brown actually was a surveyor also, and he was kind of a spy for the anti-slavery movement in, of all places, Kansas. So he was trying to turn Kansas to be anti-slavery, and he acted, well, he was a government surveyor, but he was immediately the locals thought if he was a government surveyor that he was pro-slavery. So they let him into the inner circles, and then he was able to study their plans and then ultimately overthrow them. And it's just fascinating. But I'll take this one crazy step further, and you'll love this. Guess who one of John Brown's best friends was? Henry David Thoreau.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
They met in 1857, and they were phenomenal friends. And right before he led his assault on the armory, I don't remember the date, 1858 or 59, but they were great friends. And one last thing, and I'll let you speak for a minute, but we get a peer mentor here for new faculty at the university, and my peer mentor that was assigned to me is a gentleman by the name of Patrick Chura. And Patrick Chura wrote the book on Thoreau he's an English professor here at the university. So there's going to be a lot of good stuff coming. I don't want to spill all the beans, but we're going to have some pretty cool research here in the future. I think some neat articles, and I continue to collaborate with Mark at American Surveyor. I just had a article come out on the Ohio-Michigan state line. That's obviously one of my favorites. And then I have multiple more in that series with Samuel Stinson Gannett. So that'll go on for a few more years to come. We have big plans with that to try to publish that as a book at some point, but I'm trying to take baby steps at this point. I'm a little overwhelmed, but
I had a chance to meet Patrick a couple of 3 years ago when the dedication of a mark at Thoreau's grave was held, and I was pleased to be able to participate in that. So I got a chance to meet with him and have some conversation with him, and really interesting guy. And I don't know if you knew this when you were at Harpers Ferry, but in 2005, when the Lewis and Clark expedition was being honored, one of the marks that NGS set, the first one was at Monticello, and then they started setting them along the path, and one of them is right there at Harpers Ferry.
I did not know that.
Yeah, it's right. It's kind of where the two rivers come together down at the end of the pavement, so to speak. If you cross over the bridge, you can go over the river, but it's right there, not far from the old armory building.
I was probably standing right on it. I stood there for a long time just thinking about the history. And yeah, I walked across the bridge there because that's part of the Appalachian Trail. So anytime I can get a little segment of the AT in, I try to take advantage of that. So I walked across and back. But yeah, phenomenal place to visit. So much history.
Have you had the opportunity to meet Bob Akins?
Yeah, he was just here the other day, actually. Yeah.
The reason I was mentioning Bob when you were talking about Ohio, we're always talking about the public land system and the meets and bounds system, and these are our two things that we work from. And Bob always reminds me that there's like 5 or 6 different systems in Ohio alone. So I guess you were sort of between the two. So people were trying to adapt one way or the other. But I always thought that was very interesting that there were so many different I don't know if techniques or strategies or whatever the case is. There in Ohio. Yeah.
Oh, Ohio is just a complete mess. It really is. But I tell everybody if you're able to get licensed in Ohio and understand all the different systems, and I always took a lot of pride growing up in Northwest Ohio and working for the county government there, because that's ultimately when they perfected the public land survey system as they headed west all the way to the Pacific. So that was kind of the end result. I mean, they tweaked a few things here and there with closing corners and meander corners, but for the most part, that was the end product. So I always took a lot of pride working in Northwest Ohio and doing that. But it's neat to be here. I'm going to really dive into this history. It'll be pretty awesome. But yeah, a lot of cool stuff going on.
Yeah, it's always interesting to take on new projects, and but there's also a lot to be said for coming home, so to speak.
Yes, very much. Yeah, we've been going home a lot lately. I mean, it's a 2.5-hour drive, but yeah, we still have a lot of farm ground back home, so we're trying to assist with that, and there's a lot happening. We don't get bored, and then 3 young boys at home, and they're on a hybrid approach at school, so my poor wife is trying to help with that as well.
So they're all 3 in school?
Yeah, so right now we have a 2nd grader, 5th grader, and a 7th grader.
Oh, wow.
But luckily my wife is a teacher, so she's doing her best, and she is an absolute saint and savior. She's amazing. She's been, I'll put a plug in for her. She's been 110% supportive of this position and transition from day one. I mean, she set aside her teaching career to advance mine, and it's been pretty noble of her. But yeah, we're getting through. So I'm sure she'll step back into it in a while once the pandemic kind of goes away, and she'll get back into education herself.
So the program there, I think for the most part, people kind of always look up to the Akron program because it's been so successful and been able to maintain itself well. And I'm assuming all that's still going well. And I only bring that up because in some cases, it seems to be getting harder and harder to maintain the programs, just from student population perspective, or maybe the perspective of the people running the universities or whatever. But Akron's always seemed to be pretty stable.
Yeah, no, it's factual. Our numbers are actually the highest they've ever been right now, especially coming through this pandemic, and they have not fluctuated at all. And Gary and I were just speaking this morning, and there's so much to be thankful for here, Curt. I mean, it's not just the university and the faculty here, but it's the being surrounded by the local chapter of PLSO, our advisor committee, the local surveyors in general that are so eager to support this university. And I mean, they want our co-ops, they want our graduates, and without any of that, it would definitely be a struggle. But I know our numbers are solid. We're definitely one of the top in the nation. I think we're around 80 right now, and
big number.
there's been some restructuring. You know, we were in a kind of a separate college, and after COVID hit, the university restructured, so the surveying and mapping is now underneath the College of Engineering, which is I think it's a good thing. We're going to attract, there's 400 civil engineering students in the College of Engineering, and they're all required to take basic survey. We will be able to basically show the civils more of what we have to offer, and potentially gather some more students there. But in general, I just want to preface the support network we have around here is just absolutely phenomenal. And if it wasn't for that, I don't think we'd have the numbers that we do. But you know how hard Mike and Ann have worked, and Gary he's here before me every day and here after me every day. There's a very strong, solid work ethic here, and we continue to change and adapt our outcomes for ABET and improve them, keep up on the technology, which is tough. But just like I said about the unmanned aircraft systems, we're trying to bring in that new technology and adapt it, so when they come out of the university, they're well versed with this technology, and they not only do they know how to use it, but they understand its limitations, which is critically important. So we're.
I was going to say, with you guys being sort of within the engineering department, is there a way for sort of a major minor kind of thing? If somebody was majoring in civil or whatever, they could also do a minor with you, or is that even possible because of the workload?
No, it would be. We're actually one of the few, if not the only one, that has an ABET accredited associate degree in land surveying. So yeah, they definitely could do that. We offer the CST exam here on campus, and then the 4-year BS in surveying and mapping. But on top of that, we also have the certificate program for the civil engineers, so they can take the required courses in the state of Ohio to be able to become dual licensed. And we're seeing a very strong attendance of that, because it's a requirement for elected county engineers in Ohio. So which there's great demand for across the state. So that has been well received in the civil department. They're jumping on that. And I think it's great for our profession, so they can come in and, as engineers, truly understand what we do as surveyors. And I think it's great. But no, I think it's a good thing for our program altogether. The university is quiet, though. I'll be honest with you. There's 19,000 students at the university right now, but I've heard a statistic. There's only a few thousand on campus right now. I mean, it is really quiet because most stuff is online. But we still take our classes out, and we still do our labs out on the commons. People see us out. That's our best advertising. You know, the other students on campus see us out. Akron in general, we're celebrating our 150th anniversary right now. So it was founded back in 1870. It's pretty cool. I mean, it's really cool to be here. And then it is, there's some negative publicity with all the changes going on. You know, there's been some layoffs, and none of that is anything you ever want to hear. But due to COVID, it's sometimes unfortunately necessary. But I try to stay in my bubble here, and everything is super solid here. We work hard. We push our students pretty hard. We want them to get into that workforce ready to hit the ground running. And we don't have a lot of typical 4-year students that graduate high school and just come here. We have a lot of students that are kind of in that hybrid model. They're working full time, but yet their employer will give them some time to come here and finish up their education requirements. So a lot of untraditional students, but yeah, we have solid numbers. We're pretty happy about that.
Yeah, it's interesting to me that we're at a point now. Here we are in mid-October, and ever how many months away we are from when the COVID thing really hit. Like all of a sudden, don't show up at work anymore. I mean, it was like almost it wasn't instantaneous, but it seemed like it happened really quickly. And so everybody had to start adapting to that.
Yeah.
And it's weird to me in a way that we've almost come to accept it as a way of life. I mean, a lot of the stuff we do, we're doing online now. We hold our meetings through GoToMeeting platform, kind of like we're doing here today. And work schedules are not staggered so much, but we have a small staff, but we pay close attention to the protocols you're talking about. Mm-hmm. And even going to the grocery store or whatever's going on in your life, it's almost as if it's become commonplace. And rather than, oh, that was horrible, we don't ever want to do that again.
Right.
And we don't. But it's just gone so much longer than I think I ever anticipated.
Sure. No, it's very strange. And my wife and I talk about this a lot. I mean, we follow some bands, and we talk about, can you imagine going back to a large concert venue where you're shoulder to shoulder, pushing up on people? And, that used to be the norm. It used to be fun, going to these concerts. And it's hard to imagine if that will come back. But when I was approached by the university, I actually interviewed on March 10th. And on March 10th, I left the university at about 4 p.m. And on the radio, I remember driving back to Michigan, the University of Ohio State University, Kent State, and the University of Akron all shut down at 5 o'clock on March 10th. And I didn't know what to do with myself, because instantly there was a hiring freeze. Everything was upside down. And now I was in interviews with this position, and, you know, and I had, we always call it a cushy county job, but yeah, I could have easily been there for life if I wanted to, but you know, you can't live in fear, Curt. And this has always been a dream of mine, and we just pushed forward, and we'll get through it. You know, I teach in a mask every day. We are sanitizing the stations every day. We spray stuff down, but we're gonna get through it. There's no doubt. I mean, we wipe the equipment down, the doorknobs. It's challenging, but I have a lot of faith. I mean, this will come and pass. And what amazes me is how resilient my children are.
Yeah.
You know, they don't think twice about it. They put that mask on in the morning. They're in it for the school bus ride all day. And there's sometimes they come home and their mask is still on, and I'm like, hey guys, you can take that off. But they're so used to it, right?
Yeah.
We try to reflect on it as a family. Sometimes I'm a big journaler, of course. I write a lot, but I'm trying to instill that into my children right now. I try to get them to journal, and they hate it. I'll be honest with you. They cannot stand it, but they will thank me when they're an adult and they can look back and reflect on 2020 and be like, man, that was a wreck, but we got through it. Because they're at this age, they're not going to remember all that. But
Right. I can relate to that, because the one thing that I've had to help me through my life is an extremely good instant recall memory of almost everything. And now that I'm into that septuagenarian decade, that isn't as strong as it used to be.
sure.
So it may be still stronger than normal, but it's not normal for me. And I'm always like, oh my God, am I losing it?
Yeah.
But having that ability to do instant recall, and then as you get older, it's just inevitable. So the point being, what you're talking about with keeping track of things and having that ability to look back in a way rather than just depending on memory is pretty important.
Right. No, it is. And I on a personal note, I mean, I journal a lot, and one of the gifts to my children as they get older, and nobody would care about this other than my kids, and they'll probably toss it, but I'll do a memoir someday, and I purposely write about where we lived. I even go down to what vehicles I owned when I was a kid, because at some point, you know, they're going to be curious, and they will thank me someday, but they'll mostly think I'm weird, but that's okay. No,
Well,
I think it's important.
It's kind of like part of being a surveyor. You know, one of the things we do is keep a record of everything we've ever done.
Well, yeah, no, you have to write it down because well, just like I spent 15 years at the county, and you know, at that time I thought I'd be there for my career, but I always made really good notes. I would make narratives, and it'll pay itself off now for the gentleman that replaced me, and he'll thank me at some point when he starts reading over that, and I don't have to pull from memory about what I did, because we're just not going to remember all those details. So
Sure.
yeah, that goes back to day one when you start doing remonumentation on corners. I mean, you write it all down and you record it, because that memory is going to fade. So
Yeah, you were
super important.
talking about going into the educational realm. Have you had any exposure yet to the group that's known as SAGES?
Have not, no.
Surveying and Geomatics Education Society. They're a really good group. They're pretty strong, and we do some things with them. As a matter of fact, we're talking with them right now about updating our definitions book.
Mm-hmm.
Our definition of surveying terms. I think the last time we upgraded it was like 2005.
Yeah.
And it's time to redo it. And so we've begun conversation with that group to help us with that.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's a good idea.
But it's I've had an opportunity to meet with them and talk with of course I know a lot of them just from general correspondence and what have you, but they seem to be a pretty strong group, and
Mm-hmm.
And it's good because still surveying education is a relatively small entity within academia. So it's good for them to be able to have that connection with each other.
Sure. Well, it all comes down to education, and this is a little off topic, but we still need to get into the schools and get into these younger generations to expose what surveyors do in general. And that's not just on a selfish matter here for Akron, but that's across the country. I mean, the need for surveyors is so massive. I mean, we have employers just begging us for students, and it's just massive. But I've always been a huge proponent of TrigStar. I've done it for the last 8 years in Michigan, and I'll probably incorporate it into the Hudson School District once they release some of their COVID policies. But it starts early on. We need to continue that to get into those schools and stimulate. I can't ever make this comment old, but I went in and did TrigStar one time, and I said, does anybody know what a surveyor does? And I had a young lady raise her hand, and she says, yeah, you're that guy at the mall taking a survey, right?
Yeah.
And I probably just rolled my eyes and sighed, but that's the reason why we're there. That's why we're doing it. We need to educate them. And the second one is, yeah, you're the guy in the intersection taking pictures.
Yeah.
Well, if that doesn't drive me crazy, because then you sound like a creepy old man in the intersection taking pictures. But it comes down to education, Curt. And if we can educate the youth about what we do and then get them involved, and even if they don't become surveyors, at least they would have a respect about what we do and understand.
Yeah, and actually that brings up a really good point, because I don't know how to identify myself and call my generation, but people in my age group historically haven't taken on that role nearly as well as what we're seeing in the younger groups now. And the Young Surveyors Group, or Young Surveyors Networks, what it's called, began through FIG, the international group, but now there's a really solid group in NSPS. And it's so wonderful to have all those young minds and ideas and concepts, and the willingness to do that outreach that you're talking about. That's
Sure.
the savior for the profession from my perspective. And
No, you betcha.
so I'm really pleased with all of those things that I think is going to help us reach more people through TrigStar or CST, or just outreach in general through dedication of the young professionals. So that I'm really encouraged by all that. I think it'll serve us maybe even better than my generation, because a lot of folks in my group, that just wasn't something you did. It was you just go do your work and that's all you do. So it's really encouraging to see the younger group, because without it, I think we might be in trouble as a profession if we didn't have it.
I don't disagree with you. I mean, and this is all stuff that us surveyors know, but so many of us are starting to work solo with robotics and GPS that we're not having that peer mentorship that I had growing up. I mean, I was fortunate to be taken under the wing of Dave Andrus back in Toledo. That was Jim's son, who just passed away, but he treated me like his own child, and he raised me to be a surveyor. And that, unfortunately, with the robotics and the GPS and the solo operations right now, some of that's not happening, and it really should. I mean,
right.
And just from a safety perspective, to be honest, I mean, I know a good friend of mine back in Michigan. He was solo surveying in February, and he fell through the ice in a pond and broke his ankle, and he had to crawl a half mile to get back to his truck. And he's lucky to be alive. He really is. And so yeah, just from a pure safety factor, but let alone the camaraderie and just teaching and having that peer mentorship. We have a great success rate here at Akron with local surveyors taking on students as mentors and co-ops. And I said it already, but man, we're so thankful for them, because if it wasn't for that, it would not be the program it is. And that's what gets these guys through. But yeah, that's something we all need to strive for. I know Michigan was sad to see me leave. I sat on the remonumentation peer group, and I don't know if they're going to have enough to even have a quorum. There were so few surveyors there. It was tough. I mean, we would have a hard time meeting that quorum requirements for the county. But you know, gotta move on, I guess.
Yeah, well, I wish you the best of luck there. I know you'll do well, and we'll enjoy being able to probably see you maybe during some of our student competition efforts as we do that every spring, and that's always fun. So hopefully you get to be part of that as well in the future.
Yeah, I'll be around. We got a lot to talk about in the future. You know, I'll continue the series on Gannett with the American Surveyor, and you'll see some neat history topics coming up on Hudson, Ohio. How about that? And,
sounds good.
And the zips will be strong here at the University of Akron, so we'll keep it going.
Thanks. I appreciate you joining me today. Take care.
Nice talking with you. Thank you.
You've been listening to the Surveyor Says podcast, brought to you by the National Society of Professional Surveyors. If you have any questions about today's episode or any other topic, please email us at info@nsps.us.com, and we are here to help. Visit our website, nsps.us.com, to learn more about our association, the programs we administer and support, our sustaining members, and information about future episodes of Surveyor Says. Subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, iHeartRadio, Spotify, as well as our podcast host, Podbean. And remember, it's a great day to be a surveyor.